above the CBR rate. So in their ambiguous words, the only thing Parliament did was to add the word 4%. And I was the drafter. And we have gone through this, and Bonnie was, I agree with his reasoning, but he was always on the side of the consumer. Debarl, yes. Article 46 of our Constitution, 46C, gives the public
to the protection of their health.
To the consumer, yeah, protection of consumer, to the protection of their health, safety, and economic interests. It does not give it to the banks. It gives it to the consumers. Debarl, as you are aware, I was the drafter. The guy, it says Parliament shall enact a law. I drafted the Consumer Protection Act, and Parliament agreed with me, and the President agreed with me. It does not give the banks the power they are trying to use to fleece Kenyans. I think, might I repeat, that we need to take this opportunity, Honorable Eseli, to seal this overnight trading window. We need banks to facilitate our economy. One of the primary duties of the state is to help us create wealth. How do we create wealth if there is serious capital flight, which Honorable Senator Cheriot has said? Most of this money is going to foreign banks. These banks, if you go to their world capitals where they are domiciled, they don't make any money.
Thank you.
Why are they making billions from Kenya?
Yes. All right, thank you.
Debarl, something, please.
Yes, please.
I think, my colleagues, you are not being fair. In this ruling, the judges were not speaking to ownership of banks. For hearing you speak, you are saying that this profit they are making is going to foreigners and all that. What the judges are doing, and we all know as legislators that judges do it all the time in their rulings. After they have made a ruling on a particular matter, if there is something they found in a law that could be improved on, they always make this kind of recommendation. So why are we refusing to agree with the nurses that let us go back to Parliament and address the issues that have been raised? Dr. Eseli, for example, let's go to our profession. We all know that abortion is not allowed under the Constitution. And if it is left to be ambiguous, it would make it illegal for a qualified doctor who finds that there is need to allow abortion to go on to save the life of the mother. So, because that distinction has to be made, you start by the first statement that it is not allowed, but then qualify it later on. That yes, in situations whereby it is a life-saving requirement, let a qualified person do it. I believe, and I'm not a financial expert, my brother Jacoyo, this is all that the judges are saying, that let's go ahead and cap interest rates, but as we do it, we be clear.
All right.
Well, for example, yes?
Can I speak to what
yes.
Dr. Halwale is talking about?
Yeah.
And let me say first, generally, Honorable Senator Dr. Halwale has lately adopted this habit of vilifying Parliament generally about what it has done and what it has failed to do. I think because he's no longer in Parliament. This is not the first time. I think that is not fair. I think when we are speaking to issues, and some of these issues, they may have been enacted later, but you will find their genesis was in Parliament even when you are there. So they are not entirely new. And so secondly, when you assume this moral high ground of talking about members of Parliament doing or not doing what they ought to do, you must remember that you are in that Parliament for 15 years. So any failure or commissions or omissions would apply to you in equal measure. But I think the important thing is, and I will for now avoid your exemplification, in terms of the Article 26 on the right to life, because you might not be entirely correct either. But just coming to this issue, what I understand my colleagues to be saying is speaking to the reason why that law was enacted. The reason is to prevent immoral levels of profit at the expense of Kenyans. Yeah. And what they are saying is that the effect of the decision of the High Court is to suspend that attempt to control it and therefore to revert to what we needed to avoid in the first place. So in my mind, that is completely intertwined. But secondly, what I thought you'd be saying, when you sit here and say that members of parliament are lazy, the Legal Affairs Committee did not do its work, you should be telling us what is it in that law that is ambiguous. Because we started by saying that we've not read it. But there are only two things that stand out so far. One, from the report, is that the judges, as they noted that the word at no more than 4% term of the central bank rate is vague, since it is not clear if it is above or below the CBR rate. At no more than 4%, how can that be unclear? Maybe you should be explaining to us what we don't know, at how that is unclear. When then it says that the judges think that the lack of definition of the meaning of credit facility is left open. So instead of vilifying, because we've said we've not read it, maybe you know, you should be explaining to us what is it. Because so far, from what I can see in the media, it's a bit difficult to understand. And that is why we went to the circumlocution issue. So I think it is important to put things in their perspective.
Exactly. Finally on it.
But I think the judges were also fair because they suspended their judgment for a year to allow Parliament to do those amendments.
In good faith.
And we are going to do those amendments.
Exactly.
We are going to do them. Because even if they are trying to make us, nitpick and, define things that are already known, we'll do it. If that's what will save the Kenyans from the misbehavior of the banks, we will. Because it's important that we do so, because when you look at the profits that the banks are making and the complaints that the banks are raising against this interest rate capping, it doesn't make sense. The reason, and I keep on insisting, the interest rates cap is not the reason why the banks are not lending to the Mwananchi. The banks are not lending the Mwananchi because the government itself is borrowing from the banks. And the banks prefer the government because it's a more secure borrower. That's why. So if the government stopped borrowing so much from the banks will have so much money they'll be able to lend to Wananchi. If you remember, soon after the NAC government took over and the borrowing by the government went down, the banks were hawking money on the streets. They were virtually hawking money, asking you to take a loan because they had so much money.
Yes.
They didn't know where to take it because the government was not borrowing. But right now the government is borrowing too much, and that's why you find that the banks prefer lending to the government, and then they are using the interest rates cap as an excuse for not lending to the Mwananchi.
Okay. I'll be remiss if we continue with our discussion and we don't really talk about what is happening in the country right now, the looming hunger. And of course, we know yesterday also the Deputy President gave an assurance that we have enough food in the country. This is not a cause of worry, and we've not actually crossed to the emergency zone as it is with the drought and famine. I just want to pick your brains on that a bit in light of this cyclical, knee-jerk reactions we've been having from government since 2012. We've never had a very robust sort of, futuristic way of dealing with drought and farming in this country. And this epic of time, as we always say, no one should be dying in our country because of hunger. Aaron Cheriot.
It's really unfortunate in this day and age. No self-respecting government should allow this to happen. That I have listened very cleanly, and Debarl, it's unfortunate though that sometimes to get proper news and to get the truth on, there's no a time it has ever been difficult to find the truth as it is right now in Kenya, because Kenyans have this habit on social media, because I saw a clarification. I have seen how this story began with images being shared, and I was really disturbed, only for a clarification to be given later. The beauty of this is that Kenyans have a way of self-checking by other Kenyans who clarified and say the photos that were being circulated were not actually originally from Kenya, but from Ethiopia. Mainstream media, of course, where I stand with that issue on where they are with the truth nowadays. Therefore, it's extremely difficult in this day and age. But I have had opportunity to call and talk to leaders from some of these worst hit counties like Baringo, Turkana, and they do agree that the situation is dire, but none of them can confirm that for sure people have died as was being reported in sections of the media. But they for sure agree that the situation is dire and there is need for government to act. But you must never forget something. Maybe the reason why certain office holders, the people who would ordinarily ensure that the logistical part of ensuring that the food reaches those that have been affected in good time, do not get there on time, but it becomes a matter of emergency, is that there's additional profit to be made when these things are done as a case of emergency as opposed to doing it at the right time. Because does it really make sense for government to now come out and say we have enough food in our stores? What is the food doing in the stores? That food should already have been in the distribution centers or the places that the proximity of the places where Kenyans are being affected. Therefore, it's really unfortunate. And in other speak, they say that a country that cannot feed itself is not worth speaking before its peers. And it's really unfortunate if Kenya has sunk to those levels where sections of our citizens are dying of hunger. I hope, and I listened to the communication that came from the Deputy President and the ministers who were with him yesterday, giving assurance to the country that no Kenyan will die of hunger, that the food will be moved as soon as possible. Then I'll keep an observant eye, hoping that in the next few days that will be the truth and we will not be receiving the images we've been seeing. Lastly, the most unfortunate thing, Debarl, is that despite all efforts, devolution, equalization fund, and many other things, all these mitigation efforts that have been done to try and salvage the situation in these parts of the country, there's so little to write home about in terms of intervention and trying to ensure that this thing doesn't continue to happen. This is 2019, for your information. Kenya is stable. We are building, I don't know, world-class railways and highways, but we still have sections of our country that we can't feed. It's just inhuman, to say the least, and a serious indictment on us who are in leadership.
It's inhuman, but is it also a misplaced priority that we have all these shining, stars projects that we do have, yet we cannot feed ordinary wananchi? Isali, briefly.
It's not for lack of food. It's for lack of planning, because it's a question of when the weather starts changing the way it's been changing, we should already know which are the vulnerable areas and start preparing and placing the food supplies in those areas. We don't have to wait for this crisis so that we come up with a budget of 2 billion to distribute this food. I can assure you, even that 2 billion, it's only 500 million that will be used in this process. The rest will go into people's pockets. So I think we are a system that knows that a crisis will come, and we wait for that crisis. So using the humanitarian humanitarian effort to solve that crisis, we are able to cream off some money, because I can tell you that 2 billion is too much for that particular program. And remember, as much as former President Moi has been vilified, but he built various national cereals and produce stores in various remote areas. So it's not that there's no storage space. They can actually have moved a lot of these foodstuffs, especially grains, to those stores as the weather was changing, in anticipation that this will happen, because it has always happened. So our lack of planning, then we create an emergency, and in a situation of an emergency, then those people who like creaming off from the public coffers get into play, and you get a budget like 2 billion shillings. Because remember, farmers recently were unable to sell their maize.
Yes.
Completely.
I can see something.
So how do you have some place surplus, another place deficit in the same country? Then now you want to spend 2 billion to distribute this food. It doesn't make sense. And I would like the Auditor General to get on this case immediately. That 2 billion, is it really going into buying the food and distributing it, or was the food already bought? Now it's just a question of distribution. Because if it's a question of distribution only, then the 2 billion is not warranted. I think we should be ashamed of ourselves. And I can assure you that there are people with expertise within the civil service to actually do this. It's just that they are not given space to do so. They are not given space to do so, and we end up not utilizing their expertise. Otherwise, at this time, this moment in time, we should not have this sort of situation. Just a few months ago, not even a few months ago,
yes,
weeks, there was a problem with farmers with their maize, which they were unable to purchase. Then now suddenly there's a food shortage somewhere, a crisis somewhere. I don't think it's right. And I think if we were serious people, we should look for the people who are responsible, who should have actually had the foresight to plan so that this thing doesn't happen, and call them to account. Why did they sleep on the job?
Why did they sleep on the job?
Yes.
Let's hear from Dr. Tena Molo.
I think that it's a dire situation, and there's urgent need to establish whether there have actually been deaths. I think the fundamental issue there is the assumption of the Constitution from Article 35 and the generality of the Constitution is that the government will keep the public posted on information that is important to them. So like now, we should not be speculating as to whether there have been deaths or not. We should not be speculating as to how dire the situation is. I think the government should proactively have told us what the actual situation is and what is being done about it. Because at the end of the day, it is of no use giving assurances to the public or a dying person that there's enough food to take care of them. They'll have been dead, or they'd have suffered so immensely that the planning should be such that when there's food, then there's mechanism for taking that food to those people who need it. And this is one situation where the national government and the county governments involved should work in very close collaboration. We should not have a situation where even elected leaders are speculating as to whether or not there is a crisis. That in itself is a crisis. It is also unfortunate that all this thing is coming at a time that all our scandals are surrounded around food security issues. Whether it's the maize scandal that we went through, whether it's the Kulalu Gulana that took so much food, whether it's, the Aror and Kimwerer dams, all of them are situations where we put in so much money in bad schemes, and yet we have enough food, and we have enough places where food like maize in the whole Kitale area, is naturally there, and in fact farmers are stopping to grow maize because the government is not buying. So it speaks to a crisis of policy around food security.
Crisis of policy around food security. Lastly, let's hear from Boni Halwale and Jacome on this.
I think I want to question the intention of images that are put in the papers. At the beginning, as Cheriot said correctly, this thing was started by bloggers on social media who attempted to use photographs that were not emanating from Kenya to drive a particular political narrative. In fact, originally...
So you want to tell us this particular image, if I might just speak it, this was in the Daily Nation yesterday. What are you trying to insinuate, Boni Halwale?
If you allow me to conclude, if you follow my argument, you'll get it loud and clear.
I can already pick up. Pick up
You
where
have
you're
a rare
going. Let me just
capacity of
put
reading
it.
my mind, don't you?
Okay. So which particular headline are you talking about? Just be very specific.
Yes.
Which headline are you talking
So
about?
the narrative at the beginning was that people wanted to lace it with the political failure either by the governor or the local senator or the deputy president, because he comes from that kind of community. Now, if you take now the Kenyan photographs, which are now in the Standard, there's a gentleman here called Joseph Kipsang. Joseph Kipsang, can you go to page 9 and 8 of the Standard?
Okay, I'll try and
So
lift
that
up
you beam
quickly.
in on those photographs for viewers to understand what I'm driving. The first photograph on page 8 of a young woman with her son, as a doctor who has practiced medicine most of my life in the rural areas, the photograph of this woman and that boy is a photograph of very healthy people. You wouldn't have a healthier child in the rural areas than this boy you're seeing here. That does not take away that probably he might have missed a meal the previous evening, but these are very healthy people. If you go to the next photograph, by again Joseph Kipsang, of the old mamas queuing for food. These are people who have a shortage of food in this photograph, but by state of their, if you look at their faces, these are people who have not been starving for weeks. Maybe they lack food for the previous day. Then if you go to the last photograph of the mama who is picking wild fruits. This is deliberate, using the word wild fruit. Here they call it sorich. But if you ask Eseli and I, mamas can comfortably go to Kakamega forest and pick a wild fruit there called bushero. And those bushero, they are very nice. Children take them. If you look at this woman, she's a very healthy woman. This narrative should be stopped. I think the best argument has been brought by Eseli, that what is required is distribution of food to reach these people. The government should not be waiting for when the drought has started for them to move. Food should always be moved to those stores that were built by Moi.
What about this picture?
This
was on yesterday's Daily Nation, and this is Akai Lerupe waiting for food rations at Nachoto village in Turkana County.
Yes.
What about the picture?
Look at that lady. That lady might be well over 70 years old.
Sitting on a parched land?
Yes. And they are using the terrain which is normal in their area. This kind of terrain is a normal terrain in Baringo and Turkana to blow this thing out of proportion. If we don't handle it very carefully, as Eseli said, we might actually give an opportunity to some operatives and scrapless people who want to blow it out of proportions so that something that is bound to cost us probably $500 million shillings ends up costing us 2-3 billion shillings.
Already
that will not end.
2 billion has been put aside for
Okay.
Exactly. So we got to assess it realistically and not create perceptions and narratives that have got nothing to do with the reality. What is wrong with these photographs? These are normal rural people.
This is on page...
Yes, normal, healthy people.
Page 4, let me see, of the Standard.
Yes,
Page 9.
This
Page
is
9.
a very healthy woman. This one picking sorich, which in Kakamega forest is called Busherero. It's very normal. So just take food there, distribute the food. Forget the...
All right.
And Governor Stanley Kiptis, the governor of Baringo, is a Tugen, like these people you're seeing here. He's not going just to sit in the office and allow his own people to die.
All right, so this is the pages that you're actually
Why
talking
are
about.
they not asking Stanley Kiptis to make a statement?
Okay.
I don't know, colleagues, if you noticed yesterday, I saw a government official, there was a clip, who was clarifying that the reported deaths were not because of hunger. They were deaths because of other issues.
What's the
So, yeah, we've got to be very careful.
All right, let's hear from Jacob Medio.
I am stunned, Bonnie. I didn't even know you could diagnose people from a picture in the paper.
Because I'm qualified. I am qualified.
That is
And these are the pictures
And
he's
you know,
talking about.
Bonnie has
I'm
just
qualified.
brought a very interesting angle to this. That people are talking about hunger in that unfortunate part of the world. Just to get to William Ruto, you know, really, we have to get serious. This is airtime to Kenyans. You know, Bonnie, let me tell you, this is real. That government official, in fact, I was going to raise it, when he said only 9 people have died, and I watched him. I watched that press conference live. He said only 9 people have died. It is not 20. It is true people have died. The rest of them have died because of other diseases. It is lack of proper diet that most diseases occur. It is lack of food. And when we say that this is the way Turkanas look, I have met their people there, especially the ones that work now with county government. They are very fat. They have stolen from their people. What is happening? Let us call a spade a spade. This is a crisis. Debarl, when the president says we declare famine a disaster, that is the voice of the state. I would have expected that when we woke up the other day, the whole military would have been there feeding the hungry. Would have NYS. Why do you have NYS youths doing security checks in the airport and they're not trained in security? Why can't they be down there feeding our Kenyans? Why can't we look for practical solutions without politics for once? Because yesterday, Debarl, two things I saw in your show. I saw that Honorable Pogisha telling us the dire situation on the ground and how he used to eat this thing. When you see somebody eating it, the next thing is death. This thing that Boni Halwele is calling food. Somebody ought to be ashamed of themselves, especially at a time when we are saying billions are in people's pockets to build a dam in a thicket. These are real issues Kenyans are going through. And lastly, Debarl, this talk about the media always being wrong. Who do we want to get information from? We have just had this discussion here where we have not read a court ruling.
Thank you.
But we have seen it from the media. We are commenting on it. But here we are saying, you begin by social media, then you say mainstream media.
Thank you. We need to take a short break right now. When we come back, of course, also we drill deeper on other issues as well as far as the current state of play of politics is concerned in the country. Don't go away, much more coming up on the other side of the break.
mnashika watoto wa Kenya wenye wako kwa positions kwa sababu mnataka hizo positions. Mimi nataka nikuambie Kinoti na timu yako na hawa wakubwa wenye wanakutumia, kama amtaki mtu kwa ofisi fulani, tafadhali mueleze huyo mtu atukuhitaji tena kwa hiyo ofisi, halafu mtu mwingine akuje. Lakini maneno ya kudestroy career ya watoto wa Kenya, mnashika watu wengi mnawastaka na ewa, mnashika watu wengi kwa sababu mnataka maofisi, mnashika watu wengi kwa sababu mnasema tunataka tuangamize watu wa William Ruto. Mimi nataka nikuambie Kinoti, Mwenyezi Mungu yuko, akuli laje kwa mtu, aombi maji kwa mtu, atajibu maombi ya Wakenya. Na wale watoto wengi wanateseka nyumbani kwao kwa sababu mlifuta mama yake ama baba yake, he will haunt you, Mr. Kinoti.
We have no more confidence with the office of DCI. We want all matters investigation pertaining corruption to be taken back to EACC because it is an independent, objective body.
Now we are shocked that the president is telling us the only institution he has faith in to fight corruption is DCI. Who is his errand boy? Nobody vetted Kinoti. He never went through parliament. How do you leave an independent institution vetted and given resources to fight corruption and you tell us, all of us, to go to Karura Forest?
Na tunataka kumwambia DCI aendelee kupigana na wakora, wale wanaiba pesa kule bank, wale wanafanya cattle rustling na wale waizi ndogo ndogo.
Jukumu ya DCI ni kupambana na wale wakora, wale pickpockets wako town.
If criminals are in the forefront of defending a DCI, then that DCI has lost credibility to continue being in office.
You are not going to direct us to your errand boy. We have no idea what you agreed with Kinoti when you appointed him as the director of DCI.
Mheshimiwa Deputy President na timu yake waende watoe list ya wale wanataka wachunguzwe, ili sababu wanaonyesha ni comfortable with what is going on with our DCI and the DPP, and we have a lot of faith in the choice of President Uhuru Kenyatta having changed the DCI, the EACC, DPP, na hata sasa tunaelekea mahakama. Hiyo mabadiliko ndio mnaona imeleta shinda katika nchi hii yetu.
Kwa watu wamekuwa wakitisha Kinoti, lakini nataka kuhakikisha Wakristo na Wakenya wote wakati huu hata pesa kamati yangu imemwongezea Kinoti.
Right, we want to hear from, of course, also our politicians here, and we'll also get that back from Kinoti as well. This is also what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. He says that I will get some, if you may just pick it up, I look back and see what it is. I will send some big fish to committee. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. So some big fish are to be sent to committee after investigation. And earlier on, we started with Aaron Cheriot because you're not on the same page also with what Kinoti is doing. You're saying exactly. This is not his remit. He's overplaying, he's overreaching, he's overplaying his hand, and it is not also in the Constitution. He should deal. You say this is not in his league.
Exactly, Debarl, and even beginning with this headline, this is where DPP and DCI get it wrong. You remember one of our panelists, I think it was Otiende or maybe I can't remember who, reminded us that when you have a DPP and DCI who are media savvy but code shy, then you're being prepared for disaster. Because every time I read about Kinoti, every time I read about DPP Nuruddin, is when they are issuing threats, on the media, but not when they have presented concise, incontrovertible evidence in court, and now are saying that finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have caught a thief. This is how they executed it from point A to point B. This is where the money is. That is the point that I want to meet and interact with Kinoti, but not when he is issuing press conferences, responding to us politicians. Does he have the time to respond to me? I am paid to play politics. He is paid to do his work as DCI, and that is what he should concentrate on. I have 3 points of departure, and I'd wish that you listen to me clearly, Debarl. Why I do not think what DCI Kinoti is doing is fighting graft as it is. Our concise point that we are trying to put across in all this debate is that DCI
Kinoti and his office, one, do not have the institutional capacity to do thorough and proper investigations into some of the cases that they are taking on. And some of us feel they are biting more than they can chew. The truth of the matter is that some of these cases that they are probing are way too complex. And it was upon that realization, it is a minefield of dangers, and it is upon that realization that Article 79 of our Constitution gave Parliament the mandate to create an independent body to investigate corruption cases, and that is none other than EACC. That body is supposed to, one is supplied with proper resources in terms of skill and manpower to check and ensure that the cases that are brought before it meet the prerequisite or the level that is required for one to be properly charged and for it to be deemed that they have committed an offense. So one is the issue of institutional capacity. Many of the times, and this is really unfortunate, if at any particular point anybody supplies a petition to National Police Service on the conduct of DCI Kinoti, I'll be willing to add further and additional information. Because whenever they're investigating, for example, procurement cases, part of the people they reach out to assist them, because they are police officers. This is not the primary area of training. They reach out to officers at Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. And these are people that are known to us. Sometimes they ask us as leaders and says, what is wrong with you guys? We have gone to DCI, we have looked at the files they presented before us, and when we tell them that this was properly done in law, they tell us, no, mkubwa amesema iko makosa hapa, you must find fault. So when you have people who are investigating on the premise that somebody has said there must be a fault with this particular file, find it, and the professionals are telling you otherwise, there's reason to worry. Point number two, Debarl, is in terms of the competence of the officer that is leading it. You must remember that DCI Kinoti spent his entire career as a police spokesperson. And perhaps that explains why this obsession he has with the media, why he wants to be on the news headlines. He feeds on news headlines each and every other day. He is not keen on being seen in court presenting the evidence that he has against the people that he continues to name. Therefore, I continue personally to hold that he doesn't have the competence to execute the very complex job that he's doing. Look at even the arguments that he presented before that conference on corruption that was in Bomas. His arguments were so pedestrian. It is not what you expect of somebody that is holding such a high office. Finally, the third issue that we continue to raise, independence of the bodies that are involved in this war against graft. You must remember that DCI is an office under the armpit of National Police Service. Article 149 or 249 clearly states that the officer in charge of a National Police Service, that Inspector General, should not be under the direction of anyone. But you have played clips here before of DCI Kinoti saying the reason why they have a lot of vigor and strength and going after everybody is because the president has directed. The Constitution was very clear. They shouldn't be under the direction of anyone. And even when the cabinet secretary in charge of internal security instructed, it is only in matters of policy and not how they are doing their work. Therefore, we feel because EACC has been vetted, the director of EACC has been vetted by Parliament, they have got better independence and they are not subject to the whims. Because if DCI Kinoti was genuine and sincere, if he wants to be on the headline, then let him answer some of the questions that we are asking, not to just come and give verbose political statements, oh, I will jail so and so. Let him answer, for example, there are close to 15 dams that are in the same state as Kimwarer and Aror, financed by the same model. Nothing has moved. Compensation money has already been allocated, and even mobilization fee being paid to contractors. Why is he only obsessed with these two dams if he is not carrying out a particular political narrative?
Thank you.
Is it not true? Debarl, final point. There's something that I must say on this show today.
Yes.
Because it is important for people to know how this dam story broke out. The truth of the matter is that at one particular point, CS Munya, who is in charge, who at that particular time was in charge of these regional development authorities, went to cabinet secretary, and these are facts that I want the CS to deny if I am lying. Let him issue a communication contract to this. He went to Cabinet Secretary Rotich, who is in charge of Treasury, and told him, I need Kenya shillings 500 million so that I can do a particular project in my home county. And when the CS told him that that is not how government works and how you set out government projects, he told him, why are you denying me only a paltry 500 million Kenya shillings while you have allocated 63 billion Kenya shillings to projects in your home county? If you do not give me that money, I'll spoil for this project. True to his word, he is the whistleblower. He's the person who wrote to SCAT, that body that oversights state corporations. He wrote to EACC, and while EACC were active on the file, DCI Kinoti went and withdrew the file from EACC, and he went and started investigating it. Why was it moved from EACC to DCI? Because they wanted an office where they can manipulate, they can run the prosecutions on media, and that is what we are saying. That is surely not the way to win the war on graft. You will lose if you pursue that line.
But it's a very heavy, of course, matter that you raise.
Yes.
When you don't have any evidentiary
I have
documents
told
to
you,
actually
let him
answer.
deny if I am lying. Let him come out and deny. Ask him if it is not true.
You haven't set now that tone for this conversation. We wanted also to get just clarity, maybe from also our panelists as well, because you say that the DCI is not constitutionally mandated to follow up after economic crimes. That is a remit of the National Police Service.
That's
but where is it anchored in the Constitution? Can you just show us where
that
it's
is
anchored?
what you say, because there is absolutely no point that I said it is not within his purview. I only spoke of Article 179 on the need for us to have some of these cases investigated by the constitutionally mandated independent, offices. And that is as per the dictates of Article 79.
But what will be wrong with him actually taking up this particular case?
There is absolutely nothing wrong if he was doing the right thing. But the answer is he is not doing the right thing.
Let's hear from Eseli.
I think
we'll come
I
to
think
it.
where we've reached now in this this fight against corruption, it's now is the point where the turning point. Either we succeed or we lose out. And one of the ways of losing out, and I saw this before. There was a time EACC was investigating certain matters. I think that time, was it PLO Lumumba or somebody was there? And there was a hue and cry and all that, and they shot volleys at EACC. They changed the law and discredited the head and changed the law and got a new system at EACC. And I can see the same happening to the DCI now. They are throwing salvos at him and all that, because this is a way of covering up. This is one of the ways of covering up. You hit the investigator so that you intimidate the investigator, and if possible, remove that person and put in a more friendly person. Because remember, even this EACC we are favoring. What's the history of EACC in this country? It was an offshoot of a Moi venture to please the donor community. You see, the donor community was not going to give any further funding to Kenya because of corruption. So Moi set up CASA and put it under of all the people, Harun Mwau. And that was to please the donors, that he's actually doing something about corruption. But that was not the intention, it was just a window dressing. Now this is the thing that has metamorphosed into the EACC as it stands now. And usually, in countries that have set up a similar body, like EACC, that body is usually used as a political tool to pursue some people and not others, and to cover up some fraudulent activities. Usually that sort of body ends up being a captive of the state, so that the state uses it for its various shenanigans. Otherwise, really, for all intents and purposes, to investigate corruption and actually prosecute corruption in this country, the DCI is sufficient. You know that we also have a banking fraud unit, anti-banking fraud unit within the central bank. So actually we've got layers and layers of institutions that can fight corruption. So targeting the DCI alone won't help. And something about the EACC is that if they really had been working at all, then the level of corruption in this country would not have reached where it is. It means they slept on their job all this time. So even if you look back and say that now we want them to take over the investigations because they are the independent body, then we are cheating ourselves. It means we don't want to fight corruption. I think what I would tell people is, if you are clean and everything you've done is clean, don't worry. Nothing will happen to you. They will not prosecute you. They will not find anything wrong against you. So don't panic. So, if, for example, for me, I would not panic if they ask me for all my bank accounts or whatever it is. But for those people who have something to hide, they will panic. They will panic because just in case something is found. But if you don't have anything to hide, there's no need to panic.
Thank you.
And I think intimidating the DCI is the worst thing we can do. And I think the intention now is not to help in the fight against corruption, but to stop it.
To scuttle the whole process.
Yes.
Right, let's
because
hear from
remember, let me finish. This EACC, one day the same people who gave President Uhuru a dossier, which he came with to Parliament and named people who ended up not having been guilty at all. So they reported to the EACC several times. Very few of them were actually eventually taken to court. And even the few that were taken to court ended up being exonerated by the courts. And that was EACC's work. So are we saying that we should have more confidence in EACC than the DCI?
Okay, let's hear from Otenda Omole, especially from, I think he's clarified on the constitution bit, but what are your thoughts?
What caught my attention, words which in yesterday's paper were attributed to my friend, Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, with whom we usually agree on many things. And I think the quotation there was that the DCI is mandated to fight crime, but not economic crimes.
That's exactly what I'm raising.
Yes, and I think I'll be inviting Aaron to say whether he said that, but I've seen on the clip a lot of my colleagues saying exactly that. So the first question for me is that from the investigations that I've seen, even the cabinet secretaries who've been summoned, Kiunjuri, Wamalwa, and others, it's a broad spectrum. So I am wondering, what is the reason for this hullabaloo, especially by the deputy president and those close to him? Is it an anticipatory strike? In technical warfare, they have this thing of anticipatory strike. When you know and you have reason to believe that you'll be attacked, then you do so. Is it possible that all my colleagues and the deputy president know things that we don't know? It is very strange for a deputy president to go to a public rally and attack a person who holds a docket which actually falls under the presidency and is the deputy president. It's like a head teacher, a deputy head going to a parade to complain to the students about the watchman. Which watchman was employed and has the confidence of the principal. It's just strange. Now, a number of things. Let's just get this out of the way. Number one, there is nothing that stops the DCI from investigating corruption, pure and simple. Article 244 is clear on that, and I think it bears reading. Among other things, the National Police Service shall prevent corruption. The DCI falls under the National Police Service. So let us start by agreeing that there is nothing like it being beyond the mandate of the DCI, Article 244. But when you come to Article 79, that my brother Cheruiyot referred to, that is important, and it is true that it refers to the EACC. The reason why it's EACC is tucked in here is we can discuss another day, because people were generally opposed to it, so we had to hide it under here. But what is important, and I've always made this point, that under Article 79 that establishes the EACC, it is important to note that Article 80, that falls immediately after that, talks to a mandate to fight corruption and integrity and promote integrity, but does not mention EACC. The significance of this is, and I've always made this point, that there is no exclusive jurisdiction to fight corruption by EACC. Article 80 enables Parliament to create any other mechanism, and indeed Parliament has created many others, including the Office of the Ombudsman and others, to supplement in the fight against corruption and promote integrity in office. So even if you go to 79, therefore, and I made this point countless times to EACC, you cannot, number one, say that corruption is so much, but you can't fight it, until we fight it. Like now, the hunger. Once the hunger becomes a crisis, you can't say now you stop giving any relief food because it's the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. That's a contradiction. If we agree that corruption is a real malady in this country, then we can't tell some people don't fight it. We can question how they're fighting it, but you can't say don't fight it, leave it to EACC. Thirdly, it is important to know, and as far as I know, EACC has not complained. So why is the Deputy President and his supporters complaining on behalf of EACC? EACC is an independent entity. If they had a problem with this, they should come out and say no. In fact, not just complain. They would have the jurisdiction to refuse to hand over any files. They would have that, but they've not complained. It is important to know, and I agree with the Seli, that you must remember that the EACC has issues. When Wako was appointed the chief executive, I told him, because I was the ombudsman then, that as far as I know, and I had involved in certain investigations involving EACC, unless you fundamentally change the staff at EACC, you will not work. He did not, and therefore he didn't work. Parliament, remember, had passed a law requiring all those staff to be vetted. They went to court and stopped it. That was the end of the matter.
When Kinisu tried it,
yes,
they got him out of
Every other chairman who tried this has actually successfully been removed. And I told the new CEO that unless you change the fundamental structure of the staff, it will not work. I mean, EACC is the one who, when the NYS scandal broke up initially, you remember EACC cleared everyone. He said there was no problem. Only later for us to have tens of people hold to office. So the point to be made is this. Number one, DCI certainly has the jurisdiction, like any other. It is okay to question how they're executing it, but it is not right to say you cannot execute, they cannot investigate. Two, I think on this, and I agree with Aaron, that I've always been uncomfortable with the DCI and the DPP who seem to prosecute most of their matters in the media rather than in court. But on this, I think it's the reverse. The DCI is trying to be quiet and do their work, but it is the DP and my colleagues who are raising the stakes in public rallies and attacking him. So that what we saw in the headline there, it was not him who initiated, he was reacting. I think this is an instance where the DCI is trying to do their work quietly. I think all of us should just sit back and wait for the outcome of that work.
Right. Maybe another question before we hear from Boni Khalwale and Jacob Medio, a clarification also on the EACC, because we've seen the chairman and also the CEO having, limited times. But when we come to the secretariat, from the deputy, from the deputy CEO to the others, this is actually not limited as well. And there has been this row between the vice chair and the CEO and the chairman. That antagonism within EACC is also really not auguring well when it comes to fighting corruption. Let's just hear from Boni and...
Just a moment.
Let's just
answer the politics with some politics. Tongue in cheek. If we are saying that EACC should investigate corruption and this EI should go for the criminals out there, I can agree with them. And what we are dealing with now is not corruption. What we are dealing with is outright theft of public funds, not corruption. So the DCI comes in.
All right. Let's hear from Boni Khalwale.
I think I want to start with where the president finds himself today. It's very clear to all Kenyans that his intention is to fight corruption. But I can very well understand the dilemma in which he finds himself, because to do so, he cannot do it by dint of that pronouncement. He relies on constitutional officers, and in this case, the DCI and the EACC. I want to agree with Cheruiyot on one hand and also disagree with him. I want to agree with you, Cheruiyot, that ideally the EACC should take the lead in the fight against corruption. But the president has tested and experienced the consequences of relying on the EACC. Dr. Seli mentioned what we had in Parliament 3-4 years ago, the so-called the list of shame. Nothing came out of it. So probably in the realization that not much can come out of EACC, the president is hoping that the DCI will do a better job. My second comment is that all this noise you're hearing is evidence of the fact that the war on graft has now been politicized. Completely. There are two people who are guilty. The DCI, on this issue of politicization of the war on graft, is guilty as charged. The politicians who they have quoted just now are also guilty of politicizing the war on graft. What do I mean? The DCI, I was also around 3 weeks ago, very uncomfortable with the way the narrative had started looking like his investigations and eventual prosecutions were selective. But as we have seen in recent days, he has focused on the CS National Treasury Rotich, a Kalenjin. He has invited Wamalwa, a Luhya. He has invited Chunjuri, a Kikuyu. So that, in a way, lets him off that particular accusation, that it is selective investigation and prosecution. On the side of politicians, you are guilty because if investigations are going to be informed by evidence, it doesn't matter who is doing it. If it is EACC that is investigating, then they base their investigations on evidence. It will be just as good as if it is the DCI which is doing the investigation and basing it on evidence. And for your information, the DCI and the EACC wanafanya kazi ya mkono. They are doing that for the DPP. So whether the DPP gets the information that he'll need to carry out prosecutions in court, whether he gets it from the EACC or the DCI, to me it doesn't matter. So the politicians, please relax. If your men are innocent, the investigations are going to prove it. Do not put too much hype on it.
Thank you. Right. Takomidio.
My good senator from Kericho. The DPP spoke last week. The DPP. DPP, okay. And said Kikuyus are 143 on his list, followed by Luos. I want to invite him to arrest more Luos if they are thieves. I will never come to their defense because they are Luos. I think it is primitive to defend a thief because he's from your village. You know, I have never loved a public servant like I'm loving this DCI. I think he's a cool Kenyan. He's fighting politicians who have all the microphones in funerals. His only protection is us. He must talk to us. And the media, by the way, the media that you're blaming, just use a public good called frequency. So he is doing exactly what you're doing. The question which begs our mind is, how do you know that a roar is above board? If the DCI deems it fit to take the minister to Karura, how do these politicians know this thing? They must be told, Debarl, and to stop vilifying the media, and they must be told that they are behaving badly. They must be exposed, all of us who have a way of waking up and coming here to talk, that sometimes we say things which we think are right, but we are dipping ourselves in very, very deep holes. Debarl, let me say, when Kibaki took power, we saw something called citizens' arrest. We saw in the Kenyan public arresting policemen. They were not DCI. They are just Kenyans who are tired of the same way we are tired today. Punda imechoka. In fact, if you were to take the argument which I thought Otiende was going to clarify of this Article 79, it should be the EACC to go. Because EACC in law, under that article, is supposed to, an enactment of parliament to deal with issues of Chapter 6. In fact, it is EACC which is excluded from dealing with economic crimes. That is my straight understanding of what Article 79 says. Therefore, the general crime, which includes economic crimes, belongs to Kinoti. And I can tell you, even EACC would be such a performer if you made Kinoti the CEO or the chairman. We are faced with a situation where EACC is now, it's a toothless dog, because parliamentarians put them there. You are in a situation where you take a retired bishop or archbishop, you make him to be an investigator. You know, at what point would Kenyans be comfortable? And I know Mzee Wabukala is a very nice man, but on the wrong job. This is, you're dealing with political thieves. You're dealing with people breaking a whole chapter of our constitution. Chapter 6. You need a ruthless policeman. I want to tell Kinoti that because you are not vetted by parliament, a reason being used against you, it is your advantage. We are your protection. We will go after them. I've always said, Debarl, even here, that as we revise our constitution, give parliament a lot of powers, because it is parliament, we know its location, we elect its leaders, we can go and bring it down, much like the French and many other countries do when things go wrong.
I want to come back to Aaron Cherot before you go on, because you earlier mentioned about the former CS, actually Peter Munya, when he went to the CS and said, yeah, I want this particular dam in my locality, and if you're not going to give me this steady sum of money, then I'm going to blow up this particular. And you said he was the whistleblower of this particular project. Yeah, are you in any way admitting that, first of all, yes, there was something fishy about the dams?
No.
That now Munya knew about this, and he had the temerity actually to walk over to CS Rotich to actually ask for money, because he knew some things, you know, we could smell a rat in that particular project.
And in fact, the flip side to your argument is why I have a lot of problems with Kinoti. It's because all he needed to do was to find a compliant government agency that will blow things out of proportion and run investigations in the media without any due or proper direction. Because, you know, Debarl, and it is important that Jakoyo, and to some extent Otiende, because, you know, my good friend Otiende exists in a duality. On one side, you have a very logical, clearly thinking Kenyan who's very forthright about these issues. But on the flip side of him, he's also an ODM legislator who will never miss an opportunity to throw salvos at the deputy president. You know, you can see the complexity of the struggle inside of him. But not like Jakoyo, who is just all blown out. Any opportunity to hit at the deputy president, it doesn't matter what it's
Have I today? They have been very kind to you.
You know, this is where we lose the war on corruption. Please, Debarl, and I have said this on, I like to think that I'm a progressive Kenyan. I will never ever defend a thief. I cannot. My morals don't allow me. My Christian faith doesn't allow me. But also, it behooves me as an individual to always speak the truth whenever there are issues. I have said this on this show many times, that our hope as a country, Debarl, does not lie in strong individuals. It lies in strong institutions. It is not about who you have in office today. People come and go. You can have a very, you know, a megalomaniac of an individual executing his job so well. But what if he collapses tomorrow and dies? What you need to do, Jakoyo, if we are to win this war on corruption, is to strengthen our institutions and ensure, you know, I do not like the direction that the debate is taking this morning, where it appears as if we are pitting those who believe in EACC vis-a-vis those who believe in DCI. There is absolutely no discussion in my mind about who is supposed to investigate. Anybody can investigate, even a local chief, because I am more concerned perhaps than anybody else to ensure that our country is free from corruption. Because being the youngest on the panel, perhaps I speak more for many of the young people who continue to be jobless and hopeless because of the menace of corruption. But the reason I continue to speak like this is because I know, as they say, it is only a fool who does things the same way and expect different results this time. This route that we are taking with Kinoti, unfortunately, we have taken it before with President Kibaki. You remember the times of John Gidongo. and even breathing life into EACC, and even last parliament, the issue that Eseli has mentioned. It is not just about mentioning people and running with it. We want every time institutions like DCI and DPP and EACC are asked critical questions about the job they are doing. Do not just be quick to retort and say, oh, if you are innocent, why worry? I have to be worried because I am a Kenyan, I am a young leader, I want to see the dragon of corruption being slayed. But this is not the way that they are going to succeed. Because my panelists, when you get a chance, please respond to me in a very nice and humble way, Jacob. Tell me why to you, you're only interested in Aror and Kimwarer, yet I have told you there are 15 other dams in the same state, same model of financing, nothing has been done, mobilization fee has been paid.
All right, thank you.
But because it is convenient politics for you, you just want to focus on Kimwarer and Aror. Surely, will we win the one corruption that way?
All right, Chris Tuno is asking here, ask Senator Cheruiyot if CS Rotich has recorded any statement over the alleged dam twisting. We need seriousness in this fight.
I wouldn't know. The person to ask is CS Rotich.
Yeah, I think on that, you need to be careful, Senator Cheruiyot, because you are relying on what apparently CS Rotich told you, which in itself is not what in law we call primary evidence. If CS Rotich was here and he said that is what happened, it would be more believable. But on this forum, it is hearsay and therefore dangerous. And if there was to be any such issue, then it would be part of his recorded statement. We will wait and see. Okay. But I think what is important is this.
But he seems to be having so much cheek on this that he has courage, credible information.
I want to take Senator Cheruiyot on this. He says that there are 15 other dams which have a similar scheme and no question has been raised. In other words, he's telling us that for us as the members of the public, we only know of those two. There are 13 others in which public money has been similarly lost. I am quite happy to hear of those 15, Senator Cheruiyot, either by you writing to DCI or EACC or bringing a motion in Parliament so that we can discuss it. Because I know that CI County, where I come from, there's none. So I can't raise any. But since you know them, don't complain. Don't say, for these two, why are you targeting only these two? Let them finish those two. But you also write so that all the others can be investigated. Because at the end of the day,
documents in Parliament.
Hold on. At the end of the day, as my brother Jacob was telling you, the figures so far that have been released suggest that actually Kalenjins are not being targeted. Given the numbers that we know in terms of distribution of governmental jobs, I'd have thought there should have been more Kalenjins than Luos facing prosecution. But the numbers show there are more Luos than Kalenjin.
I'm sure it's true.
So, but you've not had but you've not had us complaining that Luos are being targeted. So why are you complaining that Kalenjins are being targeted? Let the guys do their job.
That is a line of argument I have never pursued. And if you have any evidence that I have ever put a microphone before me,
you is in plural, not singular here.
I haven't.
You and your groupings.
But Debarl,
all right.
Debarl, one major problem here we are facing, which we are not coming out clearly with, these contracts for these dams are Anglo-leasing type of contracts, whereby some entity somewhere in Italy comes up with this idea, is going to give you the money to do it, but you have to use a company approved by them. This company is one coming to design what they are going to do and then finance it. So in other words, they are coming in with a loan that your taxpayers will pay. Your taxpayers will pay. Yet this amount that they are giving for these particular dams is way above what is necessary. Because I remember in the 10th Parliament, there was a move to build a dam in my constituency, which was going to involve my constituency and Lugari constituency then. And it was going to be 46 square kilometers. It was larger than Lake Elementaita. The people refused. I did a petition to Parliament. The residents refused, and that dam was stopped. And it was only going to cost 4.4 billion. 4.4 billion. So these costs of these dams that we are talking about now, there is something wrong. These contracts are Anglo-leasing type of contracts, and Kenya should not enter into those contracts at all. They are dangerous for the country. We've seen what the damages they have costed the country before. Even as we speak, we are still paying some Anglo leasing money. These are dangerous contracts. So if for anything else, we should say no. Even if leave Kinoti out of it, leave EACC out of it, we should just say no to those kinds of contracts, because they are burdening the Kenyan taxpayer for no good reason. Really, tell me, why should I, in Bungoma, be paying for a dam that costs too much in Kemwaroro, or whatever you call it? Why? Tell me why I should be paying for that as a Kenyan. It's immoral. The whole thing is immoral.
Okay.
And we should stop it.
All right, since this matter is still under investigation and all that we are having here is speculation, why should we not leave it now to the authorities to actually investigate this? Because I think this is a down scoop for us as well. We'll just be going in circles on this, and then the outcome will be, let's just see if he's promised that, yeah, the big fish will be actually, he will actually catch them in his dragnet. Just let him be. Let him have his head and do his job. Isn't that so, Aaron Cheriot?
No, I don't think so, because
let him just have his head. You have issues. You've taken the special umbrage with the DCI really handling this. You and the coteries of MPs that we've had this morning.
But Debarl,
right? Isn't that so? I just want to hear from him. Then come to
you know, when you have an officer who informally brags that this time I will execute and nail a politician X, Y, and Z, then he deserves the contempt that we are serving it to him. We are not just fools, and that's why Eseli and Otiende have asked us before, is there more that you know than we know? And I want to tell them, yes, that's why we are speaking this way. Because what we know is that the DCI is not behaving independently. He's behaving like someone's sniff dog, who is being told sniff here, don't sniff there. And that is a problem that I have with him.
But what are you doing with what you know? No. You can't just come and be spinning it on the show here and you're not doing anything with it. There's much that you do know right now, isn't it?
By speaking about it,
but this is not the forum because
doing something about it.
No, what is it that you don't share with us?
But Debarl, Debarl, I think you are asking a question that has been answered. You know, the good senator here, I'm not sure if he's good anymore, but he's you know, to say that the only beef you have with the DCI is that there's this Aror, you know, we are hearing too many names, Kunana, Kulalu, now Aror, now there's Kimwe, whatever. Now, think about it. To say that there are 15 other dams, it's like saying that those rapists who were arrested in Maseno yesterday should not be prosecuted or taken to court because somebody was arrested in Madari. Another rapist has not been arrested in Madari. That is what he's saying. You know,
that's wrong.
The DPP was on TV the other day, and I watched him. He said, the cases are so many and massive that you must begin somewhere. When you go to till your shamba, the first plow you put, are you not beginning somewhere? Why would it be a question why you did not begin from corner A and left and not this other one? I think what you're saying, Debarl, answers the question. Let the DCI work. And I can tell you, Eseli Daktari has said that these are Anglo-leasing type contracts. They are fleecing us. You know, when all this was happening, we got the formula from Anglo-leasing. Nobody factored in the unknown that we would get an intelligent cop in the name of Kinoti to stop the gravy train. What these people are doing, they have been stopped flat in their foot. And I've said, you know, when we say there are more Luos and all that, and you may say they are, it's because maybe the investigation thought those Luos who headed those places were not in the Jubilee government. Now that the investigation are inside Jubilee, I can tell you that number may remain at 56, but this other one may go to thousands. And I've said here that if you take a stone and throw it, and about people who are corrupt, the people holding position of corruption are known. This has been two people from the same region.
Yes.
And the government is corrupt. This government is ranked one of the most corrupt government on earth today. So why are we even bothered about semantics? Why are we not celebrating that Kenyans are at least scratching the surface of this wanton theft of our future? I think we can do better, and I want to caution politicians that when you talk, my good senator, like you're saying, Munya spoke and all this, I hope the authorities are listening. Let them not ask you, pick the queue, because I think if that question was not asked of Rotich in these 3 days of grilling, he needs to be called back.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something so fundamental he raised, which I felt is that directly to me that I need to answer him, Jacoyo, because he says it's what I am arguing is like saying two rapists should not have been arrested because there are 10 rapists that are known. That is wrong, because it starts on the premise that already what has happened is theft. I hold the view that up to this point, the information that I have, there is no public money that has been lost in Aror and Kimware. What we are reading are allegations. There's nothing that has been confirmed that money has been lost.
Right. I think it was on the tongue of...
the point I want to emphasize,
yes, please,
is that if what the DPP said on Jeff Koinange Live is a true reflection of the statistics of the investigations in respect of communities, then we would do well as politicians to listen. And more importantly, you, the media, must also listen to it. Because what the politicians were fearing was that they were being targeted either as a community or as a political party. But the DPP came out and brought the statistics, and he rested that concern. So why have the papers still continue to give the impression that it is only people from a certain region, certain corner, who are to blame when the DPP has already arrested?
Which papers? I would love you to quote the papers that you say they've continued to actually give this narrative.
The Nation particularly.
Which date? I can lift it from my archive here. You tell me exactly which particular paper and what page. Then you can actually put us to task, so that now you can call our house and call the media out and tell us this is where we're going it, or we're doing it wrong. Which particular paper?
Exactly. When the Nation.
Which particular paper,
and the Standard. I cannot remember the dates. When the Nation and the Standard puts headlines speaking to only 2 dams, as he has said, or speaking to politicians or political players.
Jacoy has just already said that we need to begin somewhere. Yes. You don't know what is in the mind of Kinoti or the DPP and how also this pendulum will swing after this, right?
But you see, why are you refusing
to
listen to the DPP, who actually gave statistics, community by community, and
because
gave the numbers?
You are not helping us, in other words, with these particular headlines that you're talking about.
What your headline should have been the following day would have been those statistics. You would have rested the concerns of all the politicians that my community, my region is being targeted.
So what will you say about this particular headline that we had in the Business Daily yesterday? Sub-headlines: 4 regions control jobs at Kenya Power.
To me...
that the big 4 ethnic groups dominate jobs at Kenya Power. A new report shows squeezing out the smaller communities from opportunities at the utility. Parastatal, Kenya Power report on its ethnic composition that was tabled in Parliament last week indicates that the 4 control 63.3% of the 10,980 jobs at the utility, despite accounting for less than half of the Kenyan's population. And they're all giving you all this.
Which are the 4? Which are the 4?
Yeah, so we can actually move on here. Which are the 4?
Being arrested.
Do I even have the time to actually do this? But yes, there's a graphic here. I think this will help us. This is the ethnic distribution nationally and in the Kenya, that is Kenya Power workforce. Kikuyus, we have the proportion. This is blue proportion of the total population. And this is now the way they are now, is it 30%? And they're all listed here. Then followed by Luyas and Kalenjins and Luo and Kamba and Kisi.
That confirms an issue I've already spoken to in this program, that there is no community in this country which is inherently corrupt. What happens is that once people have been given an opportunity to be corrupt, it doesn't matter whether they are black or white.
All right.
They will go.
Thank you.
And therefore, this is saying that not all Kenyans are being given an opportunity to work in public sector. If they were, they would also be found with their hands in the till.
Thank you. Our closing remarks. Let's begin with you, Dr. Eseli.
I think what I would say, tell Kenyans to do is to watch the famine relief and drought relief initiative that is being driven now. Let us watch the shilling because there is mischief when you get to this famine relief and drought relief movements. It's important we watch because the amounts involved are astronomical, and I believe there's an avenue for eating that has been created, especially when you find the hype that has been surrounding this particular venture now. So I urge Kenyans to be on the lookout and see whether we can track the shilling to ensure that none is stolen.
Dr. Otiende.
I think corruption is bad, and not fighting corruption is very bad. But when there's an attempt to fight corruption, a counter strategy to defeat it is much worse. And I fear that is what we are starting to see. I think that while we can legitimately point out where we think DCI or DPP or even the courts go wrong, we should not stand in their way, and certainly not people in the high office as high as the deputy president.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron Chirot.
Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same things over and over while expecting a different result every other time. As a country, we have been through this path that you are being driven, hyped war on corruption, but deliver zero on results. It will be insanity for us as Kenyans to accept this process to go as it is. Those of us who are raising critical issues, if the issues are answered, I will raise up my hands and praise Kinoti on any particular day. I support the war on corruption that is genuine and not political.
Thank you. Boni Halwale.
Even as the police impresses us on the fight against corruption, the IG should also control the administrative police. The way they use their firearms, they're using them against innocent wananchi. A few days ago in Navaholo, a secondary school, a high school teacher, Christine Maonga, was shot by an AP simply because another man had found the girl more attractive than him. So it beats logic. It beats logic that APs are allowed to walk freely with guns up to and including at night when they go and shoot their girlfriends.
30 seconds.
Bonnie would always find a way to end it on a agreement. But I happen to know people in that family, and our condolences. Our hearts go out for them. But I want to plead with this country, particularly the political class, that the DCI answers to some appointing authority in Parliament. Stop talking up to him. Stop addressing him in funerals, especially when you're an MP. The guy can be summoned to Parliament.
Thank you.
Because I don't think he owes individual mourners in funerals explanation. Maybe some of them have something to hide.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Muhenga Sinji on social media is saying that EACC Kenya is a scapegoat. They have been cornered by DCI Kenya. No escape route. They want a DCI with similar characteristics to those of their wives. This is what Muhenga is saying. Nicodemus Mwania is saying, there is need to reconstitute the EACC and DCI if you want the effectiveness. Remember, the loopholes still exist. Alvin Aboki, we have another century before we stop politicizing corruption in our country. The Mtuwetu syndrome is a huge stumbling block to war on graft. We will sing this for a century again. Omar Bond saying, since when did fighting graft became a one-man department affair? And then we have also Chris Tunui, I think I raised this with Aaron Cheriot. Albert James saying this shenanigans of attacking DCI in every political meeting should stop. We as Kenyans, we need justice, and those found culpable should be brought to book. We are tired of few people pocketing billions while our people are dying of anger. And lastly, Elijah Okemwe saying, so far DCI has led high-class operation of individuals suspected of graft. Where are the cases so far? The cosmetic Mr. Kinoti is engaging is unwarranted. He ought to be genuine, ought to be shown the door. This is what Elijah is saying. Thank you for your valued company. My name is Debarl Inea.